Good evening, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. Tragic news to report out of South Africa, and the horror that is South Africa for rural South Africa continues as a 14-year-old boy is callously murdered by a group of armed thugs on a farm invasion in Bapsfontein in Gauteng, part of the Ekurhuleni municipality. 14-year-old Jayden Louw was murdered when a group of 5 armed men broke into the farm in broad daylight on Saturday in the midst of the Rugby World Cup. 1 p.m., a black Mazda 3 with Mozambican license plate and a white BMW 1 were there. According to a family friend, Amanda Botha, the Louw family, including Jayden, his mother, Lyle, who's 50, and his younger brother, Damien, who are 10, were home during the incident. Apparently, the mother heard some knocking on the door, and she tried to answer the door when these thugs were there and tried to force their way in. She tried to close the door, was unsuccessful. They broke in. According to a news report in Times Live, the only media site I can find over 2 days after this murder occurred that even covers it. News 24, better known as Propaganda 24, City Press, The Independent Online, none of these services have a story on this brutal slaying. Apparently it isn't important enough to them. But Times Live, to their credit, did carry the story. So they broke in, they demanded to know where the safe was, and she yelled at her sons to get out. It's unclear what happened after that, although reports in Times Live indicate that Jayden went for the safe to retrieve a firearm, and they shot him in the chest. Well, they can only shoot him in the chest if he's facing them. So that's an odd assertion. I'm not really sure. I wasn't there. And I'm sure a lot of trauma for this family. But a 14-year-old, his life is ended needlessly. Another innocent. The cheap value of human life in South Africa. And frankly, around the world at this stage, look what's happening in the Middle East. It's unbelievable. Israeli and Palestinian citizens being slaughtered. Ridiculous. But rural insecurity in South Africa is an issue that I've talked about for many years. And the callous indifference of politicians in the African National Congress who are race baiters and race hustlers who ignore this because in their minds, they think that the victims are solely white South Africans. And they have no issue with white South Africans being murdered. They've made that quite clear. Actually, I don't think it's simply that. I think it's that the ANC just doesn't care about murders. They're happy to put them back on the street. This week, the parole hearing for convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius, the Blade Runner, the Olympian. Yeah, they're considering giving him parole after his murder of Reva Steenkamp. How can anyone get parole after murder? It seems ludicrous on its surface. But the 5 thugs who broke into the Louw family and ended the life of 14-year-old Jayden Louw, who apparently was a star student and a wonderful child, will they ever be caught? Who knows? Unlikely in Beketshele's gangster state that is South Africa. The criminal justice system set up to defend criminals and prosecute virtually no one. The police, undermanned, poorly armed, outgunned oftentimes by gangsters. And those who aren't corrupt, frustrated at the situation. This rural insecurity affects all South Africans, black, white, and brown. But the callous indifference of a police commissioner who says these are not priority crimes is shocking, to say the least. But this is South Africa in the 21st century, a country forgotten by time. You see, the developed world sees South Africa through rose-colored glasses of April 27th of 1994, when the communists took over the country, pretending to be free market capitalist and reconciliation, a party reconciliation. But that's not what the African National Congress is about. And that's not the trajectory or the history of South Africa since 1994. In 1994, there were nearly 72,000 commercial farmers farming in what is today South Africa. Today, that number is approximately 26,000. Now, some of that is because younger people don't want to farm and they left the farms. But many have been murdered. Farms have fallen in disrepair. Hundreds of farms have been sold to the government, who've done nothing with them as they lay fallow. The handful of farms handed over to aspiring black farmers, they've received virtually no government assistance in the form of land grants, in the form of financial assistance, or extension services to teach them how to be good at farming. And as a consequence, Many of those few farms that are handed over to Black aspiring farmers also fail. Land is not the issue in South Africa. Criminal justice is the issue in South Africa. The erosion of morality in South Africa is the issue. A country that's overwhelmingly Christian, but where life is cheap because the government doesn't pursue, prosecute, incarcerate, and terminate the lives of violent offenders, either ignoring them, particularly when minorities are the victims, or simply failing to prosecute them adequately. The life of 14-year-old Jayden Louw is no longer. And this is a horrific tragedy. Shot in the chest, and the thugs refused to let the mother take her son to the hospital until they cleaned out the safe. By the time she got him to the hospital in Benoni at Netcare, 2 hours later, he passed away about 3:40 in the afternoon. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. According to Llewellyn Hemmons of AfriForum's regional head for security in the North region, he was one of the ones that responded to the incident, was on the scene. This is a terribly traumatic event for the family, and the news shook the whole community. We have trauma counseling for the family offered. Trauma counseling doesn't bring someone back. I'm not denigrating the efforts of AfriForum. Thank you for your efforts. But it's time for South Africa's authorities to start acting like political leaders and govern that country and prosecute criminals, investigate crimes, and equip the police and stamp out corruption. That's not going to happen so long as the African National Congress rules in South Africa. More innocents, Black, white, and brown, Muslim, Christian, Jew, will be slaughtered on farms, in urban centers, across the country until the ANC is gone and a serious political party governs South Africa. What a horrific tragedy. Condolences to the Louw family and to all of South Africa.